Elizabeth stared out of the window, the rain beating against the glass in a rhythmic symphony that matched the chaos in her heart. Her husband's recent death had left a gaping void, one that Ava and her new husband, Daniel, had tried to fill by moving in with her. The house was full of life again, but Elizabeth felt more alone than ever. In her early 50s, she was a strong woman, but grief had rendered her vulnerable. She leaned heavily on Ava, her radiant 24-year-old daughter, who seemed to bring sunshine into every room she entered. Daniel, charismatic and attentive, was the perfect husband for Ava, yet Elizabeth found herself increasingly aware of his presence. It was subtle at first, dismissing the attraction as a byproduct of her loneliness and grief. But as days passed, she could no longer ignore the magnetic pull she felt toward him. Despite the 26-year age gap, the tension between Elizabeth and Daniel grew palpable. Daniel, too, began to notice Elizabeth's grace and beauty, qualities he had previously overlooked. His respect for her as his mother-in-law gradually morphed into something more complicated. It manifested in small, innocent encounters, until they were no longer innocent. A brush of hands, a lingering glance, each moment was a betrayal of Ava's trust, yet they were powerless to stop it. Elizabeth tried to put distance between herself and Daniel, but living in the same house made it impossible. Ava, unaware of the storm brewing, encouraged Daniel to spend more time with her mother, thinking it would ease Elizabeth's grief. It was on a stormy night when the power went out that the thin line between propriety and forbidden desire was crossed. Elizabeth stood in the dimly lit kitchen, her hands gripping the edge of the counter. The pregnancy test lay before her, a stark reminder of the forbidden affair that had upended her world. Fear and guilt knotted her stomach, the weight of what it meant bearing down on her. She knew the truth would destroy her relationship with Ava and could ruin Daniel's life. She contemplated various options, keeping the pregnancy a secret or even leaving town, but she knew that eventually the truth would come out. Daniel, unaware of the pregnancy at first, continued their illicit rendezvous, but he sensed a growing distance in Elizabeth. When he confronted her, her tearful revelation of the pregnancy threw him into a state of shock. The news forced him to confront the reality they had been avoiding. Their passionate affair began to unravel under the pressure. Arguments became frequent as both struggled with their guilt. The toxicity of their situation became evident, the once irresistible pull now a source of anguish. Meanwhile, Ava started noticing the tension between her mother and husband. Small inconsistencies began to gnaw at her, but her trust in them both was unwavering, until she stumbled upon the pregnancy test. Confronting her mother, Elizabeth lied, claiming it was a false positive or due to hormonal changes from her age. Ava wanted to believe her but couldn't shake the growing suspicion. She began to piece together the aberrant behaviors, her heart heavy with dread. The inevitable confrontation came in a storm of raw emotions. Ava caught Daniel and Elizabeth in a compromising situation, shattering her world. The betrayal was too much to bear. The two people she loved and trusted most had destroyed her. Daniel's attempts at explanation fell flat. There was no justification for such a profound betrayal. Elizabeth's guilt consumed her, and the bond between mother and daughter lay in ruins. Ava's heartbreak was palpable, and she descended into a deep depression. Isolated and devastated, her life was in shambles. Daniel, racked with guilt, sought forgiveness, but Ava rejected him completely. Their marriage was beyond repair, and he was left to grapple with the consequences of his actions. Elizabeth became a pariah in her own home, her burgeoning pregnancy a constant reminder of her transgressions. Haunted by the life she destroyed and the love she lost, the weight of her choices was unbearable. The story's tragic end came when Ava, unable to find a way forward, took her own life. Her final note expressed her insurmountable heartbreak and betrayal. Daniel and Elizabeth were left to face the ruins of their lives, forever haunted by their forbidden desires.